Hey friends, it's Mel, and I am doing another Bake with Mel video today, a recipe I wanted to make anyway, and I thought why not make it on video. I just picked up my kids from school, so if you hear background noise, it's just real life around here. My brother Nate told me about this cake, and it's called a fallen chocolate cake, which sounds a little weird, but actually is amazing because it's super foolproof. My disclaimer is, I've never made this recipe before, so we're gonna make it the first time together and decide, is the fallen chocolate cake Valentine's Day worthy? I printed the recipe off of bonappetit.com. I'm pretty excited about this one. I am using a 9-inch springform pan, that's what it calls for in the recipe. Depending on the thickness of this, and we'll have to judge it at the end, you might be able to get away using a 10-inch pan. So I'm just putting a pretty thin layer of butter around the pan. I probably would not use cooking spray because you want to sprinkle in some granulated sugar to coat the butter pan, and I don't think cooking spray would let that sugar adhere to the butter. Okay, so our pan is all buttered, the bottom and the sides. Cameron is getting us some sugar, and we're gonna sprinkle it in like we would if we were putting flour on the bottom of a pan, like for brownies or a cake. So let's use maybe, I would say a tablespoon, and we're just gonna, I'm gonna shake it around, I'm gonna like shake it around the sides, there we go. And there's our pan. It's coated with butter and sugar. So we're just gonna set it aside and make the cake batter. So I've added a half a cup of butter, 1 stick that I've cut into tablespoons to the bowl, and to that we are going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. The recipe calls for vegetable oil, but I don't have vegetable oil, so I'm using avocado oil. But I think the point is to use a neutral flavored oil, something that doesn't have a strong flavor, like olive oil would probably not be a good choice in this case. And then we're going to add 10 ounces of chocolate. I'm going to get out my scale for this, because you know I love using my kitchen scale. PSA, I'm channeling my inner Ina Garten to tell you, use the best quality chocolate you can find. Good quality chocolate for this recipe only. So Kate's theory was that 10 ounces would be 1 2/3 cup. You are close.
I'm pretty smart.
Good job. Nice work. So if you don't have a kitchen scale, 1 2/3 cup of chocolate chips. So now I'm gonna pop this in the microwave for about a minute or 2 minutes on 50% power. That's the key, so that the chocolate doesn't seize up and get really hard if it overcooks. And we're gonna melt it. Not quite melted. It's going back in for another minute. So the chocolate is perfectly melted, and we're just gonna set that aside. Okay, thanks to my faithful chickens,
Kara, come here.
we're going to get 4 eggs and separate them. Because we're going to actually whip the egg whites into stiff peaks, when you're separating the eggs, make sure that no little bits of egg yolk or eggshell get into the egg whites. They won't whip up. So to our bowl of the 4 egg yolks, we're gonna add 2 more eggs, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1/4 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm just gonna eyeball it. That looks about right. The recipe calls for 3/4 teaspoon salt, but because I used salted butter, I'm going to add less salt, probably between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon. That feels about right. And we're gonna mix this up. Get those lumps out of there. I'm calling that good. So we're gonna whip the egg whites until they're frothy, and then we're gonna gradually add in 1/2 cup of sugar and whip them until they become stiff peaks. We're going to take the egg yolk mixture and we're going to add that to the melted chocolate. And we're gonna whisk or stir that until it's really well combined. Now we're gonna take the egg whites and we're gonna scoop in half of the stiff egg whites, and we're gonna fold that mixture. The reason we're doing this is so that the egg whites, all that air that got beaten into the egg whites, we don't want it to deflate. Even before it's fully combined, I'm gonna get the last half of those egg whites and add them to the bowl. Hey, hands off each other. Okay, so we're gonna fold that last half into the chocolate mixture, and the recipe says to fold this together just until no white streaks remain. I'm gonna tell myself that some streaks are okay because I'm worried that if I mix it any longer, it's gonna be overmixed. I'm gonna call that good. So here's our pan that we prepared earlier, and I'm gonna scrape the batter into the pan. Now my brother told me the key to this recipe, because he's made it several times, is not to overbake it. So that's what I'm gonna keep my eye on when it goes into the oven. So the last step before going in the oven, we just spilled that, is to sprinkle about 2 tablespoons granulated sugar over the top. I'm excited about what this is gonna do to that top crust. Crackly and sugary, yum. Into the oven for about 30 minutes. I'm probably gonna check it at around 25 minutes just to be safe. Okay. So this baby has been baking for about 25 minutes. My brother Nate told me not to overbake it. It's a little jiggly in the center. You can see that. But, oh, whoopsie. I think I'm gonna take it out. The recipe says to bake it until it's cracked and just starting to pull away from the edge of the pan. I'm nervous enough to overbake it that I'm gonna take it out right now. So the cake is out of the oven. It's puffy, but it's already starting to kind of fall a little bit in the center. Now remember, the title of this recipe is Fallen Chocolate Cake. So you actually want it to fall in the center. It's kind of what makes it fudgy, delicious, and kind of special, or so I hear. I've never had it before. I'm not exactly sure how that granulated sugar was supposed to go across the top of the batter before it went into the oven. Mine's a little streaky and kind of sketchy. The other thing is, this cake is really paper thin and kind of crackly, hence the reason why my finger went through the top of the batter when I was testing it, so just be careful about that. I'm gonna pop this in the refrigerator and leave it overnight. We'll see how it goes. Okay, next day, I just took the fallen chocolate cake out of the refrigerator. It's been chilling all night. I actually don't think you would need to do that. You could probably dig into it warm, but last night was a little chaotic, so we put it in the refrigerator. I'm gonna take a thin paring knife and just run it around the edges before I unmold it from the springform pan. Okay. There you go, can you see it? It's kind of crackly, this like fudgy layer on the bottom. It's fallen in the center. And I actually think I'm gonna take a picture of it just in case it's vlog worthy. Okay, I'm hiding in my pantry, away from any prying little eyes, because I'm about to taste this. So, fallen chocolate cake, whipped cream, strawberries, chocolate ganache. Wow. Like, the chocolate cake is so soft and so chocolatey. And I'm sorry to say this word, so moist. So good, I can't think of anything else to say besides, it's so good. That's easily one of the best chocolate desserts I've ever had in my whole life. If you are a chocolate lover, it's amazing. Totally lives up to the hype, you guys.